You may know Hastings Country Park for its cliffs and coastal views, but hidden across this landscape are traces of an Iron Age fort, secluded waterfalls, a cave where a hermit once lived, a Victorian attraction that disappeared over the cliff, and even a Cold War bunker buried beneath the ground. Starting above Rock-a-Nore, we're heading east through the park to discover 10 places you may have walked past, without ever knowing their stories. Our journey starts above Rock-a-Nore on East Hill. At first glance, these banks and ridges look like part of the natural landscape, but they are the remains of an Iron Age cliff castle, built here more than 2,000 years ago. The steep cliffs provided natural protection, while a substantial earth bank defended the more accessible side of the hill. Archaeology shows that people were using East Hill long before that too, with traces of activity stretching back around 4,000 years. I had walked across this ground many times before realizing that some of the shapes beneath my feet were prehistoric. Further east, Ecclesbourne Glen cuts through one of the ancient wooded valleys of Hastings Country Park. But the feature I'm looking for is right down on the coast. After prolonged rain, water draining through the glen spills directly over the sandstone cliff, creating a temporary waterfall onto the beach below. In dry weather, there may be almost nothing to see, which is probably why so many people never know it's here. Catch it after a wet spell though, and this quiet corner of the coastline looks completely different. Higher up in Ecclesbourne Glen is a cave with a much more recent story. In the late 1800s, this sandstone shelter became home to John Hancock's, a former London draper who had fallen on hard times and came to Hastings. Rather than evict him, the landowner allowed Hancock's to remain here, and he turned the cave into a simple home, with a stove, books, and a small plot outside. He lived here for years and became known locally as the East Hill Hermit, until he was found dead in the cave in 1918. Today, the shelter is still remarkably easy to walk straight past. North's seat is the highest point in Hastings, and its history goes back much further than this memorial suggests. In 1787, a 32-foot survey tower was erected here as part of the Anglo-French survey, helping link mapping measurements between Britain and France. Later, the site took its name from a memorial seat dedicated to local MP Frederick North. That was eventually replaced by a viewing platform, demolished in 1982 after vandalism and fire damage. Today the compass remains, although trees largely hide the view. Walk a little further east, though, and Rye Bay opens up below, one of my favourite sunrise views in the park. From the open heights of North Seat, we drop back into the woods of Fairlight Glen. Here, a small stream tumbles over the rock to form Dripping Well, a waterfall that has attracted visitors since Victorian times. It was once much more of a destination than it appears today. In the 1920s, there was even a small tea hut just above the waterfall, serving walkers exploring the glen. Today, there's little to suggest any of that history remains, and after a dry spell, even the waterfall itself can shrink to little more than the drip that gave it its name. This next place is unusual because there's almost nothing left to see. For generations, Lover's Seat was one of Hastings' best-known beauty spots. A sandstone terrace high above the sea where visitors walked out from town to enjoy the view. But during the winter of 1960 to 61, major landslips destroyed the terrace and the cliff edge retreated inland. I came here using the old maps and recorded location, but today there's no memorial and no obvious trace of the original attraction. Just this view from close to where Lover's Seat once stood. Hidden beneath these cliffs is one of the wildest beaches around Hastings. Covehurst Bay has no road, promenade, or easy route down, and its isolation has given it a rather unusual character. It has long been known as an unofficial naturist beach. The rocks along this coastline have also revealed dinosaur footprints from more than 100 million years ago. And if you're particularly lucky, you may even find grey seals resting on the beach or watching from offshore. I've visited several times, and once you reach the shore, it feels surprisingly remote for somewhere only a few miles from Hastings. Away from the cliffs, Glen hides evidence of a very different industry. This quarry opened in 1939, extracting high-quality white ashdown sand. When war cut Britain off from similar supplies in Belgium, the sand became strategically important, used in glass for military optics, such as binoculars and gun sights. At its peak, the Fairlight quarries employed more than 80 men, and one reminder still survives. This small, windowless brick building with its heavy concrete roof, believed to have been an air raid or blast shelter for the quarry workers. Today, nature is slowly reclaiming the entire site. From wartime industry in Glen, we climb onto Fairlight Head, where another piece of military history is almost completely invisible. Radar operated here during the Second World War, but in 1952, a substantial underground operations bunker was built as part of Britain's secret rotor air defense system, watching for Soviet bombers. Technology moved so quickly that it was considered redundant by 1956, just 4 years later. The surface buildings were eventually demolished and the entrance sealed. So today, beneath this unremarkable patch of overgrown ground, a large Cold War operations centre still survives. Beyond Fairlight Head, the landscape opens out across the Firehills, and these views might have looked very different today. In 1927, Hastings Council bought this stretch of clifftop specifically to prevent the growing Fairlight Cove development spreading westwards towards Hastings. Decades later, it became part of Hastings Country Park, protecting the open heathland and coastal landscape we can still walk through today. From here, there are some of the park's widest views, east across Rye Bay towards Dungeness, and inland across the surrounding countryside. A landscape preserved largely because someone decided not to build on it. And this is where our journey ends, at Cliff End, on the eastern edge of Hastings Country Park. From Rock-a-Nore to here, we've crossed more than just a landscape. Prehistoric earthworks, hidden waterfalls, forgotten viewpoints, wartime industry, and a Cold War bunker, still buried beneath the ground. And there are almost certainly more stories here that I haven't found yet. So if you know somewhere in Hastings Country Park I've missed, leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed exploring it with me, subscribe. There are plenty more Sussex places still to discover.